time the president met with President Xi virtually was last November, a couple of months ago. The meeting tomorrow, in terms of how we got here, came as a direct follow-up to the meeting our National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, had with his counterpart. They talked about the two presidents meeting or engaging in the near future during that meeting, so hence it is happening tomorrow. And that meeting earlier this week, of course, came at an important moment in the conflict, but it also, in Ukraine, of course, it also covered issues beyond Russia's invasion, and I would expect, of Ukraine, I would expect this meeting would as well, because there are obviously a range of issues that we continue to discuss with the Chinese, and the president discusses, of course, when he speaks with President Xi. But to go to your question, this is an opportunity for President Biden to assess where President Xi stands. There's been, of course, rhetorical support or the absence of clear rhetoric and denunciation, or the absence of denunciation by China of what Russia is doing. This flies in the face, of course, of everything China stands for, including the basic principles of the UN Charter, including the basic principles of respect for sovereignty of nations. And so the fact that China has not denounced what Russia is doing in and of itself speaks volumes. And it also speaks volumes not only in Russia or in Ukraine, but around the world. And this call also comes, as Jake Sullivan's meeting earlier this week, as we have made clear our deep concerns about China's alignment with Russia and the potential implications and consequences of that. So the president will also share his assessment of that during the call. But I don't have an update for you on any internal assessment. That is just how we are approaching, or he is approaching, the call tomorrow.
How specific is the president going to be in laying out the consequences for China if they do help Russia?
Well, the president never fails to be direct, including in his conversations with President Xi, but we'll let the call happen, and I'm sure we'll have more to read out for you after the call.
Do you have any idea what military equipment they are thinking about providing Russia?
I don't have any assessment of that from here.
Okay. And what do you make of the Putin comments basically calling for a purge of anti-war opponents?
Well, I think this is a clear sign that this war is not going how President Putin planned for it to go. And there has been an outpouring of courageous protests and many speaking out against the war, even within Russia. So his effort to crack down on dissent, to crack down on the freedom of press, on the freedom of media, on the freedom of protest, is actually quite consistent with what we've seen his approach to be over the course of the last several years, but I think it's an indication of exactly that. Go ahead.
Which side requested this call between President Biden and President Xi tomorrow?
It was discussed during the meeting that our National Security Advisor had on Monday.
So are you saying it was mutually agreed upon?
They mutually agreed to move forward with it during that meeting.
Secretary Blinken just said that the U.S. is concerned China is considering directly assisting Russia by providing them with more military equipment to use in Ukraine. That is not something that we have heard from the administration before, and so can I guess you speak to how high of a concern that is for the White House right now?
It is a high concern, a significant concern, given our Secretary of State just conveyed that. And certainly our concerns about China assisting in any way Russia as they invade a foreign country is of significant concern, and the response to that would be consequences.
Before Russia invaded, the White House was pretty clear that if they did invade, there would be sanctions imposed on them as a result of that. With China, you've just said if they do help Russia that there will be consequences, but you haven't said specifically that they will be sanctions. Can you say, without saying what they are, that they will be sanctioned if they do help Russia with military equipment for this invasion?
I'm just not going to outline what the consequences would look like, and the president obviously will speak with President Xi tomorrow, and he'll speak directly about that.
Go ahead. Just on that point, just so I'm clear, I mean, I understand you don't want to detail what the consequences could be, but the president in the phone call will make clear not just that there will be consequences, but what those consequences could be.
I'm sure we'll have more to read out after the call happens tomorrow, but we have not, our National Security Advisor obviously didn't hold back in his conversation he had. Our Secretary of State did not hold back in his comments he just made publicly, and the president always takes the opportunity when he speaks with foreign leaders to be candid and direct.